Good afternoon and welcome to Little Bit Therapeutic Writing Center's Making Strides community event. I'm Tyra Majors, Como traffic anchor and reporter, and your MC and moderator for today. We are excited that you have joined us in this virtual setting. We were really looking forward to being back together in person, yet Delta variant, here we are. So thank you for joining us online. We are so thrilled to have Dr. Temple Grandin joining us from her home in Colorado and our Little Bit program participants. Our hope is that when you leave today, you will have gained new insights and learned new ways to remove barriers to inclusion. We recommend that you use 2 devices during our event, your larger device, such as a laptop to watch today's program, and a second device, such as your phone, to donate online. You can make your gift to Little Bit anytime during the program by clicking the button at www.littlebit.org. We want to take a moment to thank our sponsors for their generous support of the Making Strides community event. And here they are. Our blue ribbon sponsors are Phyllis Dunmeyer, Symetra, Heritage Bank Northwest, John L. Scott Foundation. Our virtual table sponsors are Davis Wright Tremaine LLP, Jerry and Sally Gregg. Thanks to our sponsors. All of today's event expenses have been covered thanks to them, meaning the amount you give today goes directly to providing programs and services at Little Bit. You can donate at any time today by visiting our website at www.littlebit.org and clicking on the donate button. It's on your screen as well. Little Bit provides equine assisted services to over 600 participants a year who come to Little Bit for therapy, adaptive writing, and mental health programs. Today, you will have an opportunity to hear from families directly, just like this courageous Little Bit family.
She said, Little Bit's my favorite because I get to ride horses. It's such a unique place and it's such an incredible place. It's almost hard to describe. The experience of walking in, seeing a horse that is there and ready for you to ride, knowing myself as a parent, knowing how much has gone into choosing that horse and training that horse, seeing a whole group of adults there, working with my child to help her achieve her goals and keep her safe. All of that is just, it's really remarkable. About a month after her first seizure, she was diagnosed with a disease called Rasmussen's encephalitis, which is a disease that attacks one hemisphere of the brain, and it causes progressive physical decline, cognitive decline. And really the only treatment is what's known as hemispherectomy, which is brain surgery that disconnects the affected hemisphere of the brain. So she had her hemispherectomy in June 2019, and that left her with a lot of deficits. She was 3 years old when she was diagnosed. She was 4 years old when she had her surgery and 4 years old when she started at Little Bit. And today she just turned 6. We knew that Christina needed a lot of intensive therapy to regain the function that she'd lost during surgery. But at the same time, she was 4 years old, and there's only so many demands you can put on a 4-year-old.
With hippotherapy, you're utilizing equine movement. And with equine movement, it's particularly different and unique because you're utilizing about 50 strides a minute of sensory information and physical input that's being translated from the horse's pelvis up through the client's pelvis. So when I first met Christina, we were primarily having her find her midline on the horse, which is really important just for her balance and completing any kind of task that is right in front of her. She also had some difficulty with her endurance in using her left hand to manipulate more objects because she was right hand dominant before her surgery.
So that's really what we were looking for, was that combination of having all that therapy expertise, but also doing it in a way that would appeal to a preschooler. When we mentioned it to her other therapists, they were all like, yes, Little Bit, they're incredible. They just really do amazing things. If you can get Christina there, it's just the best thing for her.
So we've seen an improvement with her endurance, her balance, manipulating objects with her left hand, and actively using her right hand for more functional tasks. Throwing those beanbags earlier, she's having to rotate, so actively using her right side of her body to turn and throw things using her left hand.
Gosh, she's come such a long way since she started here in every dimension. I can't even go into it all. Specifically, at Little Bit, she works a lot with what we call her righty arm and her righty hand, which is the arm and the hand that were affected by surgery. She wears a belt while she's riding the horse, and she's learned how to fasten her belt and unfasten her belt independently. When she first started working on that, and it was hard and she didn't want to do it, and now at the end of every session, she just pops that belt right off like it's nothing. And that sounds like such a little thing, but it's a step towards her being more independent, her knowing that she can do hard things, that she can learn how to work through things that are challenging. She's been working with Taryn since the first day she started here, so it's been great to have that consistent relationship. Taryn really knows her ins and her outs and what challenges her and what she's going to try to avoid doing, but needs a little nudge to really start working on things. So that's been great.
So Zorro is a very special horse, and he's kind of a popular horse here at Little Bit, not only because of his movement, but because of his very dear and sweet personality. Having the energy of Zorro and some of these really reliable horses really helps with their confidence. And it also, because of their funny personalities, helps me kind of teach about emotions and empathy from a social standpoint, which is also really helpful for Christina and her goals.
She knows Zorro. She knows that's my horse, and she really enjoys that. She's gotten to know the other horses here too, and because of some of her challenges, names are very hard for her, but she remembers the names of the horses. I really think it's made a tremendous difference in her life. And just being able to have this experience, we're just so lucky, and we don't take that for granted. Who would have thought that a few months post brain surgery, you could have a 4-year-old riding a horse? But we did it. And she's continued to be able to engage in that. And I think that sends an important message to her of, you can do anything. If you want to do it, we will make it happen. Little Bit is a village. It's a huge village. I'm always aware of how many people are here just making this experience possible for my kid. And I'm really thankful to everybody who's part of that.
That was just remarkable. Thank you, Christina and Lisa, for sharing your Little Bit stories. Stories like this demonstrate just how much Little Bit's mission is at work each and every day. We simply could not provide these critical services without the support of the entire Little Bit family. Each year, Little Bit Therapeutic Writing Center recognizes outstanding companies for their employees for going above and beyond through volunteer service and financial contributions that support the Little Bit mission. We honor these companies' dedication to exceptional volunteerism, corporate philanthropy, and ongoing support of Little Bit. This year, we recognize Swinnerton as our Corporate Strides Award winner. Swinnerton has supported Little Bit since 2013 by providing employee work groups to help maintain Little Bit facilities and property, and through direct financial contributions, such as sponsoring our 2021 Links for Little Bit golf tournaments. They have provided over 1,800 hours of service to the Little Bit mission. This year, we are recognizing an outstanding community partnership. The Lake Washington School District Transition Academy is our Community Partner Award winner. The Transition Academy has been a faithful community partner since 2015, providing much needed services to Little Bit, while also helping provide real-life job experience for its participants. Congratulations to both award winners. Thank you, Swinnerton and the Lake Washington School District Transition Academy. We are so grateful for your continued support and partnership and dedication to the Little Bit mission. And now I would like to introduce you all to Little Bit Executive Director, Paula Delgadis.
It's hard to believe that here we are again for our 4th virtual event. Our staff and I were very excited that we might be able to do this event face-to-face. However, the concern over the highly transmissible Delta variant made us wonder if our donors and supporters would feel comfortable and be safe sitting in a crowded room together. So here we are again, virtual once more. All things considered, we're doing well a little bit after 2020, the year that will go down in infamy for causing uncertainty, loss, and sadness. The availability of COVID vaccines and the lifting of some COVID restrictions certainly made a difference for Little Bit and our patients and riders. Many of our riders came back to our programs after vaccines became available, ensuring that we had a successful summer camp session and start to our fall session. While we've had a number of our dedicated volunteers return to help us, many others have decided not to. We've been steadily rebuilding our volunteer corps this summer and fall. It has required new ways of doing training to accommodate as many as possible, and slowly we are filling the empty holes in our volunteer schedule. While we depend on our many contributors and supporters to help us defray costs so that our families can afford our life-changing services, during the pandemic, some funders have turned their attention toward the issues that are at the forefront of everyone's minds. We certainly share those areas of concern and hope that our supporters are able to dig deep and support Little Bit as well. We just know how much our riders and patients depend on us. The stories during COVID about the decline in condition of those who were riding with us previously resonate strongly among our staff. There have been some silver linings to the situations that COVID has created. All of the required masking has reduced illnesses like the common cold and flu at Little Bit in the past year. We've had fewer illnesses among our riders and patients, our volunteers, and our staff. We have more household members involved in sidewalking, and that has been such a blessing to our staff and our volunteers. Many of our administrative staff have more flexibility in their working situations as we've successfully navigated both on-site and remote working, and we all know how to Zoom with the best of them. Last December, we held a very successful and new drive-through holiday event where program families and volunteers drove through Little Bit. Families were greeted by staff, volunteers, their favorite horses, and even Santa Claus. It was so fun. We plan on hosting this event again this year. And through it all, you've been there with us, supporting us, rooting us on, and propping us up when it's been needed. We are grateful for all of you and all that you've done for us and continue to do. We're going to get through the pandemic in the way we approach all of our other challenges, with open hearts and steely determination. Thank you so much.
Those are so amazing words, Paula. Thank you so much for sharing that. And we're seeing the community support here on our screens. There are so many people online. All right, next I would like to introduce you all to Little Bit adaptive writer, Abby, who will share a message with you in multiple ways.
Hi, my name is Abby, and I love Little Bit. I have been running at Little Bit for 12 years. I love my sister and doctors. I enjoy my time with my friends. I love the horses. My favorite is Howard. He is so tall and have a big tot. I love Pete. He is too been a little bit make me happy. Please spurt a little bit. Thank you.
Another remarkable video. Isn't Abby just amazing? Okay, let's have a look at our progress bar and see where we are. We've reached $28,362 of our $120,000 goal. That is awesome. And just remember, you can also make your donation at any time on your second device by going to www.littlebit.org. We are so excited to welcome our keynote speaker now, Dr. Temple Grandin, to the Making Strides community event. For those who don't know, Dr. Temple Grandin is well known to many for her trailblazing work as a spokesperson for people with autism and her lifelong work with animal behavior. Dr. Grandin has been with Colorado State University for over 25 years. Her life's work has been to understand her own autistic mind and to share that knowledge with the world, aiding in the treatment of individuals with the condition. Her understanding of the human mind has aided her in work with animal behavior, and she is one of the most respected experts in both autism and animal behavior in the world. Dr. Grandin has earned multiple degrees, written several books, given hundreds of speeches in her career, and has shared priceless insights into the way the autistic mind works. Her life inspired the 2010 movie, Temple Grandin, which won numerous awards, including Golden Globes and Emmys. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Temple Grandin.
Well, it's great to be here today. And when I was a teenager, horses were a really big, important part of my life. When I was a little kid, I had no speech until age 4. I was severely autistic. And today I'm a professor of animal science at Colorado State University. Now, where horses really helped me out, they helped me out on 2 things. They helped me with learning how to work, because I was a terrible student. I got kicked out of 9th grade out of a regular high school because I threw a book at a girl who called me a retard. And so I went to special school for kids with problems, and they put me in charge of the horse barn. And I had 9 stalls to clean every day, fed the horses, put them in and out. I basically ran the horse barn. Didn't do any studying, but I learned how to work. The other thing that horses did for me, it was a shared interest where I got friends through shared interests. And those were the only places I was not bullied and teased. In parking lot, cafeteria, get called all kinds of names like workhorse and bones. But when I was out riding with my roommate Carol, or doing model rocket club or electronics lab, these classes, there was no bullying. See, the kids that were the bullies were not interested in horses. It's really important for kids that are different to get friends who shared interests. For another kid, it could be robotics, it could be music, it could be theater, it could be a lot of different things. And in the 50s, there were some advantages and there were some disadvantages. Disadvantages, kids like me, who were severely autistic at age 3 with no speech, they just put away in the institution. And the kids that had the milder autism, where there was no speech delay, but they were socially awkward, they often got jobs. Because in the 50s, social rules were taught in a much more structured way. You were taught to say please and thank you. You were taught how to greet people. When we were little kids, like 7 and 8, you dressed up in your good clothes and the parents had a party. You had to greet the guests. And that taught social skills. Because teaching an autistic kid social skills is not instinctual. It's sort of like training somebody to the customs of a foreign country. Everything has to be explained. Now, some of the good things in my education was our schools had all the hands-on classes. You know, I loved art, sewing, woodworking. if I had not had those classes, I would have hated school. I think one of the worst things the schools have done is taking out all the hands-on classes. When we were out building things, I worked with very talented people that had multiple patents, owned a metal fabrication company. They were either autistic, dyslexic, or ADHD. Now, in the 50s, kids just went out and played. We had to make up games outside. So I've got a book I came out with called The Outdoor Scientist. We need to get kids outside doing things. TV was new in our neighborhood, but we were limited to 1 hour a day. We've got to keep the video games under control. Absolutely have got to. Now, I get asked all the time, how did I end up in the cattle industry? Well, I got exposed to it. I went and visited my aunt's ranch when I was a teenager. My school, my boarding school, had a small dairy. I learned how to milk cows there. Exposure. Now, I was really interested in engineering, but I couldn't do algebra. I absolutely could not do it. So I had to drop a biomedical engineering class. I just couldn't do the higher math, but I've actually done lots of engineering work. There's kind of two parts to engineering. There's the clever engineering, where you make like clever packaging equipment. And then you got the mathematicians for a food processing plant. They got to do the boilers and the refrigeration. But kids need to get out and get exposed to a whole lot of things. Also, I recognize doors to opportunity. There's a very important scene in the HBO movie where I walk up to the editor of the Farmer Ranchman and I get his card, because I knew if I wrote for that magazine, that would really help my career. I also learned that when you're really weird, you have to sell your work. You know, people didn't want to talk to me, but when I took out my drawings, and these drawings are in my book, Thinking in Pictures, and I took the drawings out, and this book's gotten a little bit ripped now, took my drawings out, and I showed them to people. They went, wow, you did that? So I learned to sell my work. And this goes back to my mother, always promoting my ability in art. I was good at art, and she always encouraged that. Now, another thing I've learned is that being a visual thinker really helped me understand animals. Animals are sensory-based, not word-based. So some of the first work I did was to look at what cattle were seeing when they went through a chute. And if there was the vehicles parked next to the fence, to be afraid of that. Maybe a chain hanging down, maybe a paper cup on the ground. Things that we tend to not notice, animals notice, because it's a sensory-based world. So I'm a visual thinker. Absolutely can't do algebra. And I'm concerned that my kind of mind is getting screened out by draconian algebra requirements, but you need us. And then you have the mathematical minds. Well, a lot of those probably on the autism spectrum out there in Silicon Valley, bringing you all the tech. And I'm really happy to tell you that Elon Musk is on the autism spectrum. Einstein probably was. And then you have the word thinker. They love facts. Now, there's a new study that Colorado State's worked on, because we have a new equine center. And it's, boy, the minute it opened, everybody, they're doing therapeutic riding, lots of autistic kids there. And our occupational therapy department's done a study. It's not published yet, but a very interesting study. It came out with some very nice results. And they had 3 treatments. They had a wait list control. They had a garden treatment where they get the kids out in some really nice park-like gardens that the university owns. And then there was therapeutic riding. Now, on the social side of things, the garden and the horses were about equal. But where the horses were significantly better was on reducing irritability. And that's kind of a fancy scientific word for tendency to throw fits and have all kinds of behavior problems, tendency to get into sensory overload. I have had some parents tell me that their kid did their first word on a horse. I think this partly has to do with the rhythm and the balancing that you get in horse activities. Because one of the big problems you have in autism is a lot of sensory problems. Now, the thing I have found when it comes to kids and animals, there's kind of 3 ways that kids respond. Love them, absolutely love them. A little scared at first, and then they love them. And then there's some kids where there's sensory issues. They're afraid the horse might whinny unexpectedly and hurt their ears. But most kids really like horses. And it's been great to be here by Zoom, and I'll be happy to answer some questions.
What are the different types of autistic minds, and what is your type?
Okay, I am a visual thinker, and the correct scientific word for that is object visualizer. And in my book, The Autistic Brain, I describe the science behind the different types of thinking. Everything I think about is a picture, and that helped me with my work with animals. And I didn't discover until I was in my late 30s that other people thought in words. Then another kind of mind is the mathematical musical mind, the pattern thinker. And the correct scientific name for that is visual spatial. These are your math kids. And then you have some people on the autism spectrum, they are word thinker. They often love history, love facts and statistics, and really good with words. Now, I always like to think about what kind of jobs could these different minds go into. My kind of mind, graphic design, art, but also mechanics. Really good at fixing mechanical devices, inventing mechanical devices, fixing cars. The mathematicians go into physics, chemistry, computer science, programming. And the word thinkers are often really good at specialized sales. There's been some real successes with selling cars and with selling complicated financial products where you need to have knowledge of these things.
Is there anything that all people with autism have in common?
Well, basically social awkwardness. You see, I noticed that when people are socializing, there's kind of a rhythmic back and forth they do. And I just can't get the timing right on that. And a lot of those conversations go by too fast for me to process. And I think a brain can be more social emotional, or a brain can be more interested in interesting things. So you start tilting towards the autism side, you're more interested in interesting things. You want to listen to a lot of songs on the radio, and I'm amazed at how many of them are about romance. That seems to be on everybody's mind. But I think it's really important with these kids to get them interested in things they can do for a really interesting career. That's one of the things that's made life worthwhile for me. And I worked with people that had metal fabrication shops that I know were on the spectrum. And I had, one guy, autistic, stutterer, dyslexic, took a welding class. He has 20 patents and he's selling stuff all over the world.
Why should an employer consider hiring an individual with autism?
Well, there's a lot of individuals with autism already hired out there in Silicon Valley for programming. But unfortunately, now some of them, instead of learning to program, they're getting addicted to video games and they're not becoming video game designers. Well, people with autism will really attend to detail. Now, verbal thinkers tend to be very top down. You got a vague, big concept. My mind works with specific examples. So I'll give you a specific example of a really successful job placement. And it was just done through connections in the neighborhood. This is an autistic person that works at a large food safety lab. Gets samples sent in by Federal Express and other courier services. This person receives them, has to do it correctly, has to be very careful not to cross-contaminate the samples. They love them. This is a job that can get boring, but he loves the attention to detail. Perfect person for that job.
What can a work colleague do to help their colleagues with autism?
Well, if they make social mistakes, you need to take them aside and quietly tell them what they did wrong. One of my early jobs, I criticized some welding and I said it looked like pigeon doo-doo. And the plant engineer pulled me into his office and explained that I just couldn't talk in that rude way and I had to apologize to him. He told me what I should do. There's a scene in the movie where my boss slammed the deodorant down, said, "You stink, use it." Well, so if there's a hygiene issue, you need to pull them aside, and I do it in private, quietly tell them they need to clean it up. You tell them what they should do quietly and in private. Also, they need to avoid jobs that have tons of multitasking. And long strings of verbal instruction does not work. You need to give them a checklist, sort of like a pilot's checklist of the steps for doing any task that involves sequence. You have to have very clear directions. And then they're going to do just fine. And there's a lot of jobs they can do really super well. One of them has been car sales because they were appreciated for their knowledge of every car on the lot.
What are your suggestions for designing work and home spaces with autism in mind? For instance, the floor plan, lighting, colors, and those sorts of things.
Well, the biggest things we got to worry about is lighting. because there's some individuals on the spectrum that can see the flicker from LED lights. I know these really cheap LED lights you screw into lamp. Even I can see some flicker on those. Doesn't really bother me. But there's going to be some people on the spectrum where lighting that flickers is a real serious problem. And that could be the number one problem in an office. But I also want to make it very clear that not everybody has this problem. I don't have it. I would avoid stripes and checkerboards for, patterns and having materials that might, cause allergies. But the lighting is the real big one. Because how could you work in an office if the lighting is flickering like a strobe light?
What gifts do people with autism bring into the world?
Well, Albert Einstein had autism. I think there's a lot of technology we would not have without autism. You see, a brain can be more thinking and cognitive, or a brain can be more social emotional. So half the population leans towards the more social emotional. The other half is going to lean towards more interested in what they do and thinking. And at what point you slap a label on that, there's no black and white dividing line. It's a true continuous trait. And Michelangelo was probably on the autism spectrum. Some great musicians were probably on the autism spectrum. We have a lot to lose if you totally got rid of autism. There's some very interesting papers, and one of them is called Genomic Trade-offs. Are autism and schizophrenia the steep price for a human brain? The same genetic code that gives humans a great big gigantic cerebral cortex is the same genetic code that causes autism. It's very complicated genetics. It's very definitely inherited. It will run in families, but it's not simple genetics. Okay, simple genetics, for example, in cattle would be Black Angus cattle put a black coat on their offspring. That's very simple genetics. And some of the horse coat colors are the same thing. It's truly continuous. And lots of little bits of code that contribute and ranging in severity. And I don't think you can totally get rid of autism, because you need some of that to make the brain big.
Do you have any advice for a parent who is about to share with their young child that they have been diagnosed with autism?
Well, the kid's doing just great. Probably wouldn't share it with them, but if the kid's getting bullied in school and stuff like that, that can give them insight. It gives a lot of adults later in life that have problems with their marriages a lot of insight to learn that they're on the autism spectrum. But I'm seeing too many parents babying their kid and over-sheltering them, and they're not learning basic skills like shopping, ordering food in restaurants. I'm just appalled at the number of teenagers that are doing well in school and have never worked. And I asked the parents, what are we going to do about getting this kid working? They said, well, we're thinking about it. So we don't need to think about it. You need to find, some colleague you have that has a store and get the kid a summer job there, and just make sure it doesn't have too much multitasking. This is where we're really falling down. We're doing a good job with the little kids, but then I'm seeing too many young adults getting addicted to video games and going absolutely nowhere. So one kid, you get them out there doing things, always giving them choices. Be careful about multitasking. Get out and get a life. Another kid's in the basement playing video games. And there have been some successful weaning off of video games with car mechanics, because it tends to be my kind of mind that gets addicted to video games, and they need to be limited. Let's get them out riding horses more. That's the kind of stuff they need to be doing. Or even out in the garden more.
What can the parent of a young child with autism do now to prepare them for adulthood?
Well, first, a young child with autism, if it's 3 years old, I got to work on the foundation of the house: speech, using utensils, dressing, brushing their teeth, just the basic things. That's what you work with little kids. And then as they get older, chores. See, this is one thing where the 50s upbringing was helpful, because these things were taught in a much more structured way. And if I forgot to say, please, mother would cue me, you forgot to say. The other thing is, grown-ups corrected children no matter where they went. That was the way it was done in the 50s. Like if I went in a store and I touched too much stuff, the clerk would say, only touch the things you're going to buy. They didn't scream no. They would quietly give you the instruction.
What have you seen work to ignite young learners?
Well, they need to be exposed to a lot of different things. When I was 8 years old, I didn't know how to read. They were using whole word methods with Dick and Jane books, and mother taught me with phonics. Um, you know, my art ability, mother saw that. She always encouraged my art ability. Another kid, it might be music. But how's a kid going to find out they like a musical instrument if they don't ever play one? See, again, this gets back to exposing kids. I was just talking to a person up at our equine center who's got an autistic kid, and they got him in a Montessori school, and they're doing really well because they do a lot of hands-on things. And then if the kid's a math kid, then somebody needs to teach them programming. But if you don't expose them to programming, they're not going to learn programming. They've got to get exposed to stuff. I mean, I'm going to use an algebra book for a door stop, but there's another kid that needs to, you ought to give them the algebra book and give them the old-fashioned algebra book, not the new stuff. Give them the old-fashioned math books. And there'll be some autistic kid that'll take off with that. But if they don't get exposed to it, how would you know?
What can you suggest to a parent of a child with autism who is struggling to form friendships?
Where the kid is struggling with friendships. Well, this is the shared interests. One teacher started a Star Wars club because the kid liked Star Wars, and now the kid got friends to a Star Wars club. Also, you've got to teach these kids to take turns. You don't always get to be front of the line. You don't always get your way. They've got to learn that. But things that they can do, shared interest. One kid really liked Minecraft, the video game. So a mom had a bunch of 2x4s cut up and had the kids paint them for Minecraft blocks in the driveway. And our kid became the sensation of the neighborhood. Or you can collect all the Amazon boxes and have giant Minecraft blocks. Just things like that, where there's a shared interest. Friends who shared interest. So but I like to get kids doing things that are physical. That's why I also got this book, Calling All Minds. And it's got my childhood aviation projects. And I would tinker and tinker for hours with these things. Well, these are the kind of things that, kids can do with friends. My sister, she's not autistic, but my mother, she loved theater. So my mother put plays on with the neighborhood kids.
What would you say to a parent who suspects their child has autism, but is hesitant to receive that diagnosis?
All right, let's look at the age here. You have little kids. If you have little kids that are not talking, let's say he's 3 years old and he's not talking, you need to do something about that now. And I do a lot of talks in areas where there's no services in certain parts of the US. And I say, go to your church and get the grandmothers to work with this kid. You got to start working with them now. Then you have a slightly older kid, maybe he's 10 years old and has no friends. And so they seek an autism diagnosis. But also you need to be doing something to help the kid to get friends. What's the kid interested in? There's too many kids getting addicted to video games, and I want them out doing a lot of different things. And people ask me all the time, what would I do if I could totally change the schools? I want all the hands-on classes back in the schools. Art, music, sewing, woodworking, cooking, theater, all of that stuff in all the grades.
Temple, what are some ways that people with autism can lessen their sensitivity to light, sound, touch, and other stimulants like that?
Sometimes on the sound, there's been some good successes if the child controls the sound. Like, for example, let's say there's a scoreboard in the gym that has a loud buzzer. So they took the kid down there when nobody else was there to let him push the button on the buzzer or turn the hairdryer on and off. One autistic kid wanted to work with power tools, but he couldn't stand the electric drill and some of the tools. Well, the thing to do is to go down to the shop when the other students aren't there and just turn stuff on and off where they control it. I didn't like popping balloons. Well, the thing to do would be to maybe blow balloons up, starting out with small ones where they aren't as loud. I pop them. You see where the kid controls the dreaded thing. Now, the flickering lights, that for certain individuals, that's something that's got to be fixed. You'd have to get the kid's desk over by the window, find some better quality LEDs that don't flicker. But I know the cheap things do flicker because I got one in a desk lamp. I can tolerate it, but there are other individuals that will not tolerate that cheap light bulb. It's one of those cheap LED ones. One of the things verbal thinkers do is overgeneralize, because in dealing with autistic kids, am I answering a question about a 3-year-old, an adult? Then when they get older, are they verbal, nonverbal, and what is the problem? Now, all levels of autism can have very severe sensory problems. The other thing that can happen with nonverbal individuals is they can have a painful medical problem like acid reflux or stomach ache, and they can't tell you about it. And there's a whole chapter in Navigating Autism about the painful medical problems. And nonverbal, they can't tell you about it. And the doctors will sometimes just poo-poo it off and just say, well, that kid's just autistic. Well, the kid's got acid reflux that needs to be treated.
Temple, what is the best thing about your experience as a professor?
Well, I really like seeing students learn. One of my assignments I have students look up journal articles on different databases and then summarize them. And I like it when a student comes up to me and says, well, my class really helped them, the family medical problem, because they learned how to look up scientific journal articles. Or another girl said to me that some of the things I taught about cattle handling, she tried them out at the feed yard she works in and they worked. I tend to think in specific examples. And I really like it when the student says something that I recommended in class worked.
As an educator, how do you structure your teaching for a student with autism?
Well, I've had a couple of students I think were autistic, and basically in the lectures they usually do fine with that. I didn't have anybody in the class that had really, really severe sensory problems. I had a blind person in my class, and obviously they couldn't do the drawing, so I gave them a paper to write.
Temple, what gives you hope?
Well, it makes me happy when somebody writes to me and said that something I recommended worked. That makes me happy. And people have been asking me, what am I going to do now that I'm 74 years old? And well, I hope I can inspire the next generation. That's something that I want to do, because I'm seeing too many parents and teachers locked into the label, and they don't think the kid can ever do anything. And now we have a label that covers such a wide range of people that's really kind of ridiculous. When they're little, when the kids are little, when I was nonverbal, I looked really super severe. And you do early intervention, they kind of pull into 3 groups. Ones that become fully verbal, kind of moderately verbal, and then nonverbal. But some of your nonverbals can learn to totally type independently. And they describe a sensory jumbled up world where seeing is jumbled. It's sort of like a bad cable TV or bad satellite television. And hearing is cutting in and out like a bad cell phone. And they have trouble controlling movements.
Temple, this is your last question. So what about a horse that makes them an ideal partner for therapy or adaptive riding?
Well, they're, riding is a fun activity. And a lot of kids just, love doing it. When I was a teenager, my life totally revolved around horses. They were my life then. And my most prized possession was a saddle and bridle. And I got friends through that. Like my roommate and I would work really hard to get ready for shows. And also, there's lots of chores at the barn where kids can learn how to work too. And that's something I think in a lot of therapeutic riding programs, that's getting the kids to help out with things like cleaning stalls. I mean, I'm talking not little kids here, but teenagers. I learned important working skills doing that. And one of the big problems I'm seeing today is smart kids on the spectrum, and they're not learning how to work. We also need to find things to replace the old paper routes, like volunteering at a church once a week, where you do a task outside the family on a schedule, or you help out at the farmers market, help them put their tents up and run their booth. Now, when I talk about that, I see it. I see the farmers market that we have right near where I live.
Temple, thank you so much for being with us today and for taking the time to share your important insights with us and with Little Bit families. Do you have any closing thoughts for us today?
Well, we got to start looking at developing the strengths in these kids. I was good at art, that was developed. Another kid, it might be math. Some other kid, it might be some other skill. Develop the things that they are good at that can become hobbies and careers for the rest of their life.
That was just remarkable. I think we all can say we just learned something from Dr. Grandin. Just a reminder, you can make your donation on your second device at any time during the program at www.littlebit.org. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions for today's event. They were great questions, by the way. We selected the most common ones for Dr. Grandin to answer today. And Paula, it was really great to hear from Dr. Grandin, and she's just quite the trailblazer.
It was so great to have Temple with us here today. For those of you who don't know, and she mentioned it briefly, just west of Colorado State University's main campus in Fort Collins is the new state-of-the-art Temple Grandin Equine Center that opened its doors last spring. It is the new home of one of the leading equine assisted service facilities in the world.
Wow, hopefully each and every one of us someday can make a trip there and visit. Well, we are about to hear from another very, very special Little Bit family. But before we do, I do want to thank Paula Delgadis, Executive Director of Little Bit, and our esteemed keynote speaker, Dr. Temple Grandin, for sharing her experiences and her knowledge with all of us today, and for her dedication to helping people with autism. A virtual round of applause for them both. Over 100 diagnoses are represented across the hundreds of people with disabilities that Little Bit serves each year, and autism is one of the most common diagnoses. Now I'd like to introduce you all to Leo, a longtime Little Bit therapy patient, and his mom, Sonia, who will share their Little Bit experience with you all.
Hi, my name is Sonia, and this is my son, Leo.
Hi, my name is Leo. Nice to meet you all. I know I'm working hard on the horse, but to be honest, I don't really notice it because it doesn't cause me pain. And instead, I feel happy on the progress that I am doing. And to be honest, Little Bit has made me feel like I'm a part of a family, and you know, they're all very welcoming. They all like to talk to me. They all like to have conversations with me, and I feel like I'm a part of a big giant family.
My son, he has more strong legs, strong back. He can coordinate more of his movements with his hands. Yeah, it changed in everything.
Yeah.
He's able to sleep better. He even eat better. I don't know, that sounds strange, but it's
Sounds funny to say, but
yeah,
it's honestly true.
Little Bit provide us financial aid. Without their help, we are not able to come here. So it's very important for us to have to continue to come here. Otherwise, my son won't be able to have therapy at any other place.
And I'm very thankful to be able to speak on it today in this video. And thank you for taking the time. To everyone that has worked with me and talked to me and think that I'm really cool and motivate me every time I put myself down about my disability. And I learned a lot through Little Bit about horses and about my own disability. So thank you very much.
Please join us and help Little Bit.
Make sure to go to littlebit.org and please make sure to donate because this has changed my life.
Yet another great video. Thank you so much, Leo and Sonia, for sharing your message with us. At this point, we've raised $28,619 to go toward the Little Bit mission. Thanks to all of you. Remember, you can donate at any time by going to www.littlebit.org. Now we have pre-assigned each of you to a breakout room where a Little Bit program family member will share what brought them to Little Bit and how they have been impacted by their Little Bit experience. During this time, you will have the opportunity to ask questions, and we hope you will take advantage of this unique opportunity to interact live with Little Bit participants. On behalf of the Little Bit Board of Trustees, staff, and all of the Little Bit participants, thank you so much for joining us for the Making Strides community event. Each of us has the power to transform the lives of people with disabilities. And now, enjoy your breakout room experience, and we'll see you soon, hopefully in person.